If you guys watched our video on the top 5 champions that you need to be abusing in patch 9.20, you'll know that I mentioned that mid lane is in quite the strange spot. We can really easily confirm this by just taking a look at professional play, the World's Tournament, and seeing that there is so much crazy stuff happening at the moment. You might see Renekton mid, you might see Syndra locked in, but wait, it's Syndra ADC, not mid. If Echo's locked in, you can't tell if it's Echo jungle or Echo mid. This makes it so that while every other lane is in a rather counterpick focused meta, mid lane is not at all. This is really awesome for the mid lane because it allows champion diversity to thrive, whereas in the other lanes, a heavy counterpick meta means there are only a few things that you can take for those lanes. Today we're going to be going over the top 5 mid laners that you guys can be picking in all of your games and still seeing a lot of success. Now if you haven't already, make sure to check out our website GameLeap.com. There we have a course on the mid lane essentials if you guys are looking for more content to help improve your mid lane play. Alongside this we have some champion specific courses for you and courses on the remainder of the fundamental roles. All 5 roles are covered there, and if you want to be improving your play for this end of season, I would highly recommend checking it out using the link in the description below. Now without further ado, let's get into the top 5 mid laners that you should be abusing this patch. Now since mid lane is in such a weird spot right now, these aren't going to be in any specific order. Instead, we're just going to go over the pros and the cons and allow you guys to decide what you want to be playing specifically. Now, right away at number 5 is going to be Fizz. Fizz is probably the strongest AP assassin that you can be picking in the mid lane at the moment. Another option is Echo, but Echo's seen more as a jungler at the moment rather than a mid laner. Fizz is also a lot safer than Echo, especially early on into the game. Fizz's base damages paired with Ignite can oftentimes net him a kill in the early game, and if not, it's almost guaranteed with a gank at 6. But of course, there are going to be some drawbacks to Fizz as well. Fizz's main drawback is that his early game itemization is just not that strong. You see, most champions that itemize AP in the mid lane are going to be mages, which means they can abuse mage itemization. This is items like Lost Chapter, Ludens, Rod of the Ages on some champions. Certain champions can also get away with building a tier early on into the game into a Lost Chapter. Since Fizz isn't a mage, he's not able to abuse these items. If Fizz wants to do damage, he needs to build items like Protobelt, Lichbane. If he wants survivability, he needs Zhonya's. If he wants Pen, he needs Oblivion Orb. There really just isn't any room in his build for any mage itemization. While his early game itemization is going to be cheap and he's going to be able to get it before most mages, it's not going to be as impactful as a Lost Chapter would be. This means in order to abuse the leads that you can get with Fizz, you need to be on top of your base timings and you need to be farming well. If you're not able to get your first component, either Hextech Revolver or Sheen, before the enemy mage bases, then you're not going to be able to score an early kill on them most likely. As far as how Fizz does into AD matchups, he's usually not able to gain a lead on them simply because AD assassin itemization is just better than what AP assassins have. What Fizz does have here is he has the opportunity to outplay. Fizz is able to buy a Zhonya's early on into the game, whereas AD assassins don't have an item like that for magic damage. Sure, an AD assassin can build Hexdrinker, but it's not nearly as good as a Seeker's Arm Guard, and once finished, Mauve Malmortius is nowhere near as good as Zhonya's. This means while AD assassins have the early game advantage, Fizz is going to have the late game advantage on them. Now while we are on the topic of AD assassins, let's move to our number 4 pick, which is going to be our AD assassin for the list, Talon. In previous patches, Qiyana was our go-to AD assassin, but Talon is once again reigning supreme after some Qiyana nerfs. Please keep in mind that patch 9.19 is the Worlds patch, so Qiyana is still going to be played at Worlds because she is not nerfed on the Worlds patch. Since we're not playing on the same patch that Worlds is being played on, Talon is going to be reigning supreme here for us. Now, why is Talon so strong as an AD assassin? Why is he a better pick than Qiyana and Zed? The reason is very simple. Talon's early game is stronger than both of these champions' early game. Zed has outplay potential, meaning his late game is a lot stronger, and Qiyana has better mid-game team fighting, but Talon is going to be securing leads a lot earlier on into the game, meaning he can take control of the game very early on. This is because of two main things. The first is the insane amount of kill pressure that Talon has at level 2. In fact, Talon is the most lethal champion in the entire game at level 2. He is the most likely to score first blood. Because of this, you're forced to play very safe when you're playing against Talon, meaning Talon is constantly going to have lane priority. Because of this early lane priority, Talon is able to easily roam into the enemy jungle and side lanes, perform ganks, and extend a lead. He hardly ever misses out on any CS during these roams because he roams so quickly with Moby Boots and his E. Now this doesn't mean that there aren't drawbacks to picking Talon. If you do lock in any AD assassin mid lane, you have the chance of running a full AD team. If you end up playing against a very tanky team while playing full AD, your chances of winning are not that great. Another downside to Talon is that if you can't get lane priority in the early game, you're pretty much going to be useless. A lot of other mid lane picks have the win condition of scaling even if they don't win their lane, but Talon just doesn't. If you are playing Talon, you have to win your lane. Now onto the number 3 pick, which should be your go-to if you hate playing against assassins. If picks like Fizz, Echo, Talon, Qiyana, and Zed are the bane of your existence, you should be locking in Lissandra. With Lissandra playing into an assassin, you're able to take Aftershock as a rune, and you have your ultimate plus Zhonya's. That's 3 different ways to survive an assassin. Now, if the enemy team isn't playing a very heavy dive comp, then you are able to take different runes, maybe Electrocute, you can take Comet if you want, you could take Airy even if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter that much. You see, Lissandra is a very unique class of champions, and she doesn't really fit with most champions. In the mid to late game, Lissandra is what is called a disruptor. Her main goal is to get into the enemy backline, drop her damage, and then ult herself, causing chaos. She also has the option, if she has Zhonya's, to ult the enemy carry and then Zhonya's herself. But most of the time it's better just to ult yourself, especially if you're able to catch the enemy carry with a W. If she does score a kill or an assist, her passive will start to trigger, causing even more chaos in their backline. Lissandra works in the late game simply because she already has a good kit and a lot of damage, but most people just don't know how to deal with her. The enemy carry is going to be unable to walk up and DPS your team until your invulnerability is done. However, it's not just Lissandra's mid and late game that are strong. You see, in the laning phase, Lissandra is a utility pick. In higher elos, most people are going to know to take cleanse into Lissandra, but in lower elos, nobody really is going to be doing that. It's going to be very rare to see. Because of this, with all the lockdown that Lissandra has, she's able to use her utility to empower her jungler. Every time that her ultimate's up, you can score a kill. Not only is she good at facilitating ganks, she's also very good at 2v2ing. The only time you're really not going to be scoring a kill is if you have a utility jungler on top of a utility mid laner. If your jungler picks Ivern, for example, you might not have enough damage to kill the enemy champion during your lockdown duration. As a result, Lissandra's pretty much only good if you have a carry champion in the jungle. If your jungler does lack damage, you're not going to be seeing nearly as much success with this pick. The upside to this pick is that she is by far the highest damage disruptor in the entire game. She's very safe in the laning phase, making her hard to gank. She's allowed to take teleport, which means she can counter ganks in her side lanes, and as a result, she's able to take control of the game from a macro perspective. Now, she is very weak to certain picks like TF or control mages like Cassiopeia, but these are picks that you're not really going to have to worry about unless you are in the higher elos. Now, speaking of control mages, let's talk about some options that you have here. Of course, you have Orianna, but I already covered her in a video a few days ago, so I don't want to be too redundant here. In that same video, we also touched on Ahri. Now, she's kind of a hybrid between an assassin and a control mage. She fits some of the characteristics of both of these classes. Of course, these picks are still good and nothing really changed in the past few days for them. If you want to be using them, by all means, go for it. My number 2 pick, however, my pick for a control mage, is going to be Viktor. Now, it may be a little early to be saying this. Maybe only the Viktor mains are seeing success on him. However, I believe that the recent buffs to Viktor have been quite the quality of life change for him. He has a lot more utility in his kit now, which allows him to not necessarily be a primary carry. You see, before, you would only pick Viktor for his damage, and that's it. Now that Viktor has a lot more utility in his kit, he's going to be viable much more often. Now, he does still have similar weaknesses to before the buffs. If he backs before he's able to get his first upgrade, he's not going to be nearly as strong, especially in the early game. However, if he is able to get that first upgrade, he's going to be getting that earlier than most mages are able to get their lost chapter, which means he's going to have a better early game than a lot of mages when left alone. Viktor is a pick that, just like Fizz, requires a huge understanding of base timings in order to make it work. This requires a very strong laning phase from an individual if you want to be seeing the most from this champion. If you don't find yourself with a gold lead in the first 5 to 10 minutes of a game, then Viktor is probably not the pick for you. If you are a player that frequently sees that they have a CS lead in the first 10 minutes of the game, and you want to be abusing that strength of yours, then Viktor is going to be a fantastic pick for you as far as control mages go. If you are able to get that early upgrade, then you're able to increase the tempo of the game and make the game more about you as a player. You can pressure your lane more, go for plates, try and get the enemy jungler to camp your lane and absorb as much pressure as possible. Build a CS and gold lead, which will allow you to get even more upgrades and more items, which will just allow you to take over the game. Now, control mages are typically the hardest champions to be playing in the mid lane. They're required to be good at a lot of different things. You need to hit your skill shots. You need to know how to control the wave. You need to know good base timings. You need to know where the enemy jungler is. All of these things are very important. If you're not able to handle them, I wouldn't recommend playing a control mage in general. Now, the last champion that we're going to be talking about today is going to be a bit of a unique champion. He doesn't really fall into any specific category, though if you had to put him in one, I'd say he's closest to the other control mages. The pick that I'm talking about is TF. The reason that TF is so strong right now is because of his lane pressure combined with his global pressure. TF's pressure in lane is different than most other champions' pressure in lane. You see, most other champions have the threat of damage. TF doesn't really have a lot of bursty damage in his kit. If he has a gold card paired with a Q and the empowered auto on his E, then sure, that is going to be fairly bursty, but it's nowhere near as much damage as, say, a Syndra full combo. Where TF draws his lane pressure from is the threat of his gold card. In the early lane phase, while TF's gold card isn't going to be dealing too much damage, you can't afford to be eating it, because if you do get hit by gold card and the enemy jungler is there, you're going to die. Later on into the game, once TF is able to get his items, he is going to start doing damage, and he's going to be getting those items before you because of his passive. Now, both AD and AP TF are viable. Either one works. Just remember that ADTF wants Kleptomancy, and APTF wants either Comet or Airy. I don't recommend that you ever take Spellbook like Apto takes occasionally, because it's just going to be overwhelming for you. You're not going to be able to use it at its fullest, along with everything else that TF has to focus on. Aside from the early game pressure that he has, and the itemization that he's oftentimes going to be arriving to earlier, he also has insane global pressure with his ultimate. If there is one thing that you want to be doing properly on TF, it's your global pressure. A general rule of thumb for TF is that before your first base, you're able to use your mana very liberally. You can use it however you want. It doesn't matter if you run out of mana. However, you want to be basing ideally right before you hit 6 or right as you hit 6. Once you do hit level 6 on TF, you need to be much more conservative with your mana. You shouldn't be dropping below 200 mana, because if you do this, it removes your ability to react to a play that might be happening in a side lane. This also prevents you from making any aggressive plays of your own. Poor mana management on TF results in a huge loss of tempo. if you can't manage your mana, you shouldn't be playing TF. When played properly, TF is probably the best mid laner in the entire game. He's not very hard to play mechanically at all. As long as you can lock in the right card at the right time, you can play TF. The hardest thing about TF is going to be the macro game. But lucky for you, there are plenty of resources out there to help learn macro specifically on TF. If you are looking to pick up this champion, I would highly recommend looking up VODs or VOD reviews of Apto, who is the best TF in the world. If you don't already watch Apto's VODs, I highly recommend that you do, because he is one of the best players to learn from. Now, again, please keep in mind that these picks were not in any specific order. They're all going to be good in certain scenarios. That is all that I have for you for today's video on the top 5 mid lane picks for patch 9.20. If you are looking to learn the game and get better in general, I would highly recommend checking out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of guides done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses, so if that is something that interests you, make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. I've checked out a lot of the content on there myself, and I can honestly say it is all very high quality. If you are looking to improve your play for this end of season and grind out the ladder, our website is going to be one of the best investments for you. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.